Welcome back to the Neighbors Podcast. My name's Allie Parsons. I'm your host, and today we have Lou Ramirez on the podcast. Lou works for Warner Music Nashville and has lived a life in radio and working with different country music artists and helping them to promote their music and just living the Nashville life. I call him the country music missionary. He is viewing his calling not only as in music, but to share the gospel. And so the way that he has creatively approached his role to love on people, to go deeper with them, to care for their hearts instead of just what they do and what they perform is inspiring. And he just started a new ministry called Believers. It's actually not new. It's been around for 10 years, but it's recently gotten a ton of traction. Just this year, they had hundreds of people show up. He talks about that in our conversation, and we just can't wait to see what God does with that. And so I'm so inspired by him, just the way he approaches life, that God has placed him exactly where he's at to do what he loves. He loves his job, and he doesn't waste any of the relationships, any of the moments, does not miss a chance to share Jesus with whoever comes in his path. So I know you're going to be inspired too. As a reminder, our episode is brought to you by some amazing corporate sponsors. Our first is Grounds of Grace. The next time you're looking for a great cup of coffee with a great local cause attached to it, make sure to check out Grounds of Grace Coffee Company here in Jacksonville. Grounds of Grace Coffee Company is the for-profit to their nonprofit sponsored by Grace, which has been serving in the Jacksonville murder capital 32209 for the past 6 years, fighting for the gospel to be delivered into some of the hardest communities in our city. Grounds of Grace is widely known for their popular lattes, shaken espressos, fun seasonal drinks, and their iced plant-based refreshers. Check them out on Instagram at Grounds of Grace Jacks or at one of their 5 locations in Jacksonville. This episode is also sponsored by Lay Construction. Lay Construction is a full-service general contractor specializing in commercial interiors. Whether your project is office, retail, hospitality, faith-based, or industrial, Lay Construction services all market types. The company is Jacksonville-based and dedicated to serving Northeast Florida by delivering the highest quality work in the industry. For any of your construction needs, Lay Construction is your team. Check out some of their completed projects on Instagram at lay_construction or online at lay-construction.com. And here is my conversation with Lou Ramirez. All right, Lou Ramirez, welcome to the Neighbors Podcast.
Oh, well, thanks for having me here.
Thank you for being here. I know this was an early morning to get you here. You got in late last night from Nashville, which is kind of like your second home, but we are so grateful you're here. I'm so excited to talk to you today.
Really?
Really?
I was thinking about this when I was getting here. You've had Pastor Joby, Pastor Britt, Victor Mesa. Like, what's going on? Now you got to Lou Ramirez. Like, are we at the bottom of
Please.
We may need to hit up your Patreon right now.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, please plug it.
Let's plug the Patreon right now. We need some better guests, you know.
No, I'm so excited to talk to you. And I even wore my most Western boots today, which I see you have your boots on too, because you live your life in country music and you're kind of like a Nashville guy and you're from Texas. So you just have like all these Western vibes to you.
When I was driving here to record this, I drove by and I saw that Whataburger that was out there and I'm like, it just hits my heart. Like Whataburger hits my heart in a special way.
Is that a Texas thing?
It's a Texas thing. It's from my hometown in Corpus Christi, Texas.
No way.
Yes.
Okay. So are you going to go there after this?
Oh, you know it.
What's your order from Whataburger?
Double meat, double cheese.
Oh, he knows the whole menu.
Combo.
Oh, I don't know that I've had Whataburger maybe like once in my life.
Really?
Yeah, I didn't even know that we had one that you passed on the way here.
Like literally, it's right across the street.
Well, we were just talking before we recorded that you are kind of like the OG podcaster. You used to work in radio, and you were saying that you kind of started a podcast before podcasts were even a thing.
Yeah. And we started it. At that time, I was doing afternoons at KJ97 in San Antonio, Texas.
Of course.
And we started a podcast, and we started doing interviews. We started doing phoners. We'd have people in.
What's a phoner?
When artists would call in the radio station they're called phoners. It's a fancy term for interview.
Okay.
You know,
very fancy.
I've got a phoner with one of those things.
Yeah. Okay. So I think that this is your time. Like, this is your sign to bring back.
Put the cape back on. Is this what we're saying?
Put the cape back on.
Let's get the cape. Let's put it back on.
You've lived one of the most interesting lives. Which I know you don't think it's interesting, and I even told you before this because I'm good friends with your wife, who is on staff at the church. We work together very closely together. She said Lou is really bad at talking about himself. And so you're going to have to force him to talk about himself. And then she gave me like 10 fun facts about you that I truly was beside myself on most of them. So I'm going to ask you first before I spit some of your fun facts. What would you say is the most interesting thing you've ever done?
Interesting thing I have ever done. Did she mention about me getting a NBA championship ring from the San Antonio Spurs?
She did. Please tell that story.
So I was working in radio in San Antonio, and when you lived in San Antonio at that time, it was like 2005, 6, 7. There's a team. They were rolling. We had Manu Ginobili. David Robinson was about to retire. And I just started talking about basketball on the radio. And somebody reached out to me and said, hey, would you like to be the in-arena host? It was crazy because I'd get to the arena and I have a script that I'd have to memorize in between the breaks. And, you know, you've been to games, right? You see all the games.
Yeah,
I've
never been to an NBA game, but I've been to games.
You know, it's like, ladies and gentlemen, it's time to play the HEB.
Is that the voice you
Kind
use?
of like that, yes. My wife will tell you I have like a radio voice. And so I was like,
incredible.
Hi, everybody. And at that time, I was Crazy Lou. Crazy.
That was your name?
That was my name at the games. And it was crazy. It was super fun. I got to watch a lot of great basketball. And then at the end of the season, they lined us up and they said, here's a championship ring. So the guy that's like non-athletic has got an NBA championship.
You get the NBA ring.
I mean, and by the way, it doesn't have all the bling to it, you know.
Yours is the scaled down.
I got the low rent, you know, like, look, guy.
Yours is like the peasant ring.
Yeah. You got the ring. It doesn't have like the diamond encrusted.
So funny that they have multiple versions.
Oh yeah. I got the.
Okay, so she did tell me that one. She also told me about your Blockbuster stint and that you worked at Blockbuster and rented videos to Selena.
Oh gosh.
You didn't even remember.
Yeah, I didn't even remember.
Which, when we talk Selena, I was just telling my mom this morning about you, and I mentioned this. She was like, oh, like Selena Gomez? I was like, no, like Selena, the one that doesn't have a last name and got murdered. I mean, tragically murdered.
Yeah, Selena Quintanilla down in Corpus Christi, Texas.
And she used to come in and rent videos from you?
Yeah, she lived in Corpus. She was a star. She had just produced a record that was going to cross over, and it was just such a tragedy. But yeah, she would go into, it was HEB Video Central, and that was such a great job. That was like my first job. Mm-hmm. And I love movies, and I got to talk about movies all day. It was awesome.
So you were sad when video stores went out?
By the way, anybody that's listening, VCRs were this thing back in the day.
Right.
Like, you might not know. These things called tapes would go in these VCR machines, and you would press play. It's really wild, right?
It is wild. Except now I keep seeing the VCRs are coming back as like retro. I've been seeing it in a lot of photo shoots and design stuff.
Yeah. People
are bringing back the old school fat TVs and with the VCR videos, which is just...
It always comes back around. It always comes back around.
Okay, the other fun fact she told me is that you used to do a lot of radio interviews, including that you interviewed Donald Trump.
Yes. Still in San Antonio at a different radio station, Donald Trump called in. Do you remember the reality show he did, The Apprentice?
Yes.
He was doing a phoner and called in and got to talk to him. And I've talked to like a lot of interesting people.
Is that really wild that like now he's the president of the United States and you literally interviewed him?
I also interviewed Bill Clinton.
Oh, really? Before he was president or when he was president?
After he was president.
Wow.
Yeah, it is kind of wild. You get these opportunities when you work in media platforms to talk to and have just really interesting conversations with people. But Donald Trump at that time, I never would have thought he would be president.
Of course, I mean, no one did. Yeah, he was just like a reality
I was like,
show.
Weren't you in Home Alone
star,
too?
Right? Yeah, right. Okay, so before we get to all the other interesting things that you do, tell us how and when you met Jesus.
I was one of the camp kids.
Okay.
Summertime, in high school. Went to a really great church in Corpus Christi, a Baptist church, and I just at camp just surrendered my life to Jesus, and I had the back then the power team. Do you know what the power team is?
I don't.
Oh my
Tell us about
gosh.
it.
It was kind of like a ministry of guys like breaking boards and bending bats and doing anybody of my era or age will, when they hear this, they'll be like, oh yeah, the power team.
These were like the cool Christians.
These were the cool Christians.
Okay.
These were they're like ripping phone books. Okay. Yes. You think I'm crazy, Allie. You're looking at me like you think I'm making this up.
No, this is so interesting. I've never heard of it.
It was called the power team.
Okay.
And I just realized at that point in my life that something had changed. And I was so blessed because my father left when I was very young, and God stepped in and really moved my heart, my brother's heart, my mom's heart. And church has always been important to me, but as my journey progressed, it was not about just church. It was about a relationship, right?
Was it hard to know God as Father when you had a father that left?
100%. Yeah.
What was that like?
It was way hard. When my dad left, I remember it very vividly. I think I was like 5 or 6, and there was arguments, and it's just me and my brother and my mom and my dad. And I remember my dad looking at me in the eye when I was very young and was like, all right, you're the man of the house. And he left. And you
remember that moment?
Yes, I do remember that moment. And it was super heavy, right?
And you were how old?
5 or 6.
Sheesh.
Yeah, it's just like, why do you do that to a kid?
A lot,
right?
Yeah.
And so it was difficult. It was really difficult because at a young age, I felt like a responsibility to my brother, and my mom to not get in trouble and kind of like live a really great life and not to be not to cause any more stress on what the stress was with the family.
Yeah.
Right. And so it was difficult to like, why would this happen? And, like you're in the middle of your own story. Right. And sometimes for many, many years, I thought like how unfair and how cruel that was. But then realized like him leaving was the best thing for our family. I don't think I'd be the man if he was still my father in that house. Right.
Yeah.
It was like there had to be a separation. So once that separation happened, all of our family, like really, my mom was the spiritual leader of our home. And she really directed me and my brother to Christ. And it was beautiful. It was really great.
What do you feel like now becoming a dad? Have some of those old things come back up? Or how has God used your childhood as you've now entered into fatherhood?
I love fatherhood. It's the best. It literally is the best.
Yes.
You raise these little humans, and I have prayed a lot. I have been intentional with things. I always wonder. I look at my son Roman, and I want to give him really good direction, and it's really easy to be seduced to what college you're going to, or are you going to play sports? Or I just want to point him to Jesus, him and Jovi May to Jesus, right? Like I want to really pour in, as my mom did for me, of like, make sure you have a relationship with Christ. But like every night we started doing the, how can I pray for you? And it's just so sweet when he's like, can you pray that I have a good day at school tomorrow? All right, buddy, let's pray. Let's pray together. And
teaching him that that's what prayer is. Like, what do we need today? And what do we need to talk to God about today? And
sometimes I'll go to him at night and I'll just say, hey, can you pray for me? Can you pray for Dad? Because I'm a little run down. I've been on the road. And he's like, okay, Dad. It's great.
I think it's really sweet that God gave you a son first, as you were the older brother, to just redeem probably some of those parts of your story in a really beautiful way, and to have that relationship with him that maybe you didn't get to have, even though, like our pastor always says, where the ideal is not realized, grace abounds.
Yep.
So your childhood, of course, grace abounded, and your mom was the spiritual leader and stepped in such a beautiful way. But now that you get to change that generational pattern, like you get to step in and be that for your son and your daughter, of course, but is just what a beautiful thing that God does in the details.
Isn't it amazing?
It is amazing.
What a great God we serve.
What a great God we serve.
Come on.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about what you do. So tell us what you do for work and how you got into it.
Okay. So I was in radio for many, many years. In about 2009, I was kind of done with radio and wanted to do something else. And so I started working at a very boutique record label for about a year, and it didn't work.
It didn't work?
No, it was terrible. I worked there for about a year, and the label itself closed its doors.
Oh no.
I'm like, So I'm sitting here going, okay, I just left an industry that I loved for many, many years, and I'm working at this little record label, and nothing happened. And I was kind of lost for a quick second because I didn't know what was going to happen to me. Warner Music Nashville called, and they said, "Hey, we saw what you were doing at that little bitty label. Do you want to come and work with us?" And started working there in 2010, and we were off to the races. And I work in radio promotions, which is marketing for Warner Music Nashville, and work with really awesome artists. And I get to listen to really great music and get to talk, because I love talking about music. Anybody that gets around me knows I could yap about music all day.
Who are some of the artists that you work with?
For years, Blake Shelton, Cody Johnson, Cole Swindell, Brett Eldridge, Hunter Hayes, Zach Brown Band.
All of them.
Yeah,
a lot of them.
Gabby Barrett. I mean, Dan and Shay.
Oh wow, yeah. What do you now? Some of them. Okay, how does it work? Do you get assigned them? Have you found some of them and brought them to the forefront? Like, how does this work?
Yeah, no, I'm not in the A&R department. Okay. So A&R, they get signed, they have a deal, and so the game plan is for me is specifically marketing. So I get to work with all of them in my new role at Warner. But let's just say Dan and Shay has a new album coming out. I get to reach out to the Bobby Bones show and say, "Hey, would you like to have Dan and Shay do an interview with you?"
Okay.
Or a phoner, right? And by the way, there's a new single that's coming out with Dan and Shay, and here it is, and send it kind of like from a syndication perspective for all the different radio platforms. Yeah, it's marketing. If you want to break it all the way down. Yeah. But if there's upcoming shows or things that are in our programmers or DSP folks that we want to have a little bit more time with these artists, I'll fly in and cover a show is what it's called.
Okay.
And so get to travel. And sometimes, like Cole Swindell, for example, I remember we were just in a car and we're just going from station to station, kind of just driving and playing music. I mean, it's like
you think it's all so glamorous, and then like brass tacks, you're just in a car driving to radio stations. It's not nearly as.
Hello, we brought you some donuts and country music. And,
oh man,
yeah, and it kind of starts like that.
Yeah,
so it's different things for different artists and where they're at.
Okay,
in their journey.
So what is fun about it for you, and what's hard?
The travel's hard.
Okay.
Yeah, they always say, like, you travel for fun, not for work. Like, traveling is hard, especially now after COVID. It is, like, crazy.
I know.
What's fun is meeting and getting in the road with an artist that's, I mean, they spent their whole life trying to get to this level, and then you're taking them out and driving down the road and like starting their journey with them, and then later seeing them get a #1 song or get an award, or I mean, there's To me, that's just so amazing.
Have you been with any of the artists who, before they were really big names? Like, have you been with them when nobody really knows who they are and they're just coming out with their new records?
Yeah.
Because I feel like that would probably be a cool journey to witness. Like, no one really knows them.
Yeah.
And then they're like winning
Like
the CMAs.
CMAs.
Because you went to the CMAs. You go every year, right?
I don't, in general terms, I don't go every year. Like this upcoming year, just depending on, every year is a little bit different. Sometimes it's CMA visits, ACM visits. Sometimes it's, as we were talking about a little bit earlier, sometimes it's just CRS, which is Country Radio Seminar, things like that.
Okay.
Yeah, no, it's really crazy to see
wild.
somebody go. I always use Cole Swindell as an example. Young came out with a song called "Chillin' It." The song went to #1. He recently got married. He's got a kid on the way. We're pushing on his 13th #1 song.
Wow.
Next week, right?
So cool.
It's like going from having no music out in the marketplace to like literally working on your second greatest hits.
Yeah,
And
that has to be wild.
and seeing them grow, right?
Yeah.
That's like.
Okay, so as a Jesus follower, but being in the country music world, how do you view what you do as a mission field?
Yeah, it's so. I've had this conversation a lot, and I want to just make sure that there's a lot of people in country music and the music that started their musical journey at church. There really is a lot.
Well, now on American Idol, a lot of the top contestants are worship leaders.
Yes.
Which is so wild. And that the judges will always be like, oh, it's another worship leader.
Yeah,
so
here we go.
I get it,
Yeah, there's a lot of musicians that start their journey in church and somehow they lose sight of that. And I can see why, because the seduction of being not just in Nashville, but a music scene. And that's why I have difficulty talking about myself for this reason, is because a lot of the industry teaches the people that are in it to focus everything on themselves. Here's what I did. Here's my #1 song. This is, you're literally on a stage singing a song and people are worshiping you. I mean, think about that.
Yeah.
Think how that could mess your head up if you're going town to town, city to city, and everybody's like, I love you. Your song changed my life. It really, that is crazy.
Yeah.
So, yeah, there are a ton of people within the industry that need Jesus, just like every industry. And this is just my circle that I can get around and be on the road and talk to somebody. And it may be not just an artist that's on stage, but it might be just the drummer or the side guitar player or another label person. It's like, how's your heart? What's going on? And can you do me a favor? Can you check on me too? Can you make sure I'm good too? So there's a lot of work to do within the country music industry, and I'm excited about it.
Your wife was telling me that you will play Pastor Joby's sermons in the car when you're traveling station to station.
I love
Is that
it.
true?
It is true. One specific one, for an example, was Drew Parker. I love Drew. I think he's great. I can't wait for everybody to kind of hear what his journey is whenever he releases it. But yeah, we're on the road and we just start talking about Jesus, and I'm like, he just wanted to know my story and why I live in Jacksonville and not in Nashville. And, a big reason is Stephanie works at 1122, which that means I work at 1122 too, right? You know what I mean? So, and as long as Warner was okay with, look, there are certain things that I can do. I can get on the road, but the one thing that is a no-go is like, we're in Jacksonville because we believe in what the church is doing, not the brand of the church, but what the ministry that it's. So I was telling Drew about it. I was like, have you heard about Pastor Joby Martin? He's like, no. I'm like, man, I got to tell you, this guy is a preacher. Let's go. And he's like, really? And we just started listening to Pastor Joby messages. And now I think Pastor Joby is like mentoring Drew through some things. So it's
cool.
It's again connecting people.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think, when we talk about being a missionary wherever you are, it doesn't mean you're every second, every conversation shoving Jesus down people's throat. It is what you're saying. How's your heart? And can you check on me? And I think when you bring things, especially in an industry like yours, when you bring things from the surface level, just one notch down deeper, I bet it makes people pause because they're not used to getting that. They're used to the shallow questions that everyone asks. So when you take it one level deeper, it says, oh, well, what's different about you that you want to go deeper? You know what I mean? And then you're like, well, I love you. I love people. And let me tell you about Jesus, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
Which I think is good for people to hear, because I think it can be daunting sometimes when we say, you know, the person in your cubicle is the one who needs to hear about Jesus. And that doesn't just mean you're like showing up to their cubicle, opening your Bible and reading them scripture.
Let us pray.
Yeah.
It's
It's actually probably not the best method. But I think being intentional where you can, finding the opportunities, like, oh, if we're going to ride in the car for 4 hours, like, I'm going to put this on in the background and maybe you'll be listening.
Want to hear this?
Yeah, that's really cool. Okay, so tell us about Believers and what it is and how it started.
I'm so excited about this. I'm so pumped up. So several years ago, let me take it one more step back. There's an event called CRS, which is the Country Radio Seminar, every year in Nashville. And it has been going on for several years, decades even, right? And about 10 years ago, me and a good friend of mine named Geeter Harrison, who works at iHeartMedia, I called him, and CRS it's a great place to learn, but it's also a great place to fall down into slippery places.
Okay.
Alcohol and all the rock and roll lifestyle you can probably think of, right? And I just told Gator, I was like, I don't know if I can even handle CRS again. He's like, you know what we should do? We should have a cup of coffee, go get breakfast together, invite some people, and just talk about Jesus, share our story. Kind of what we were just talking about, like really dig in and share. That was 10 years ago with 12 guys. We just did an event at CRS earlier this year with a couple hundred people, with Brandon Lake doing worship.
Wow.
I mean, every year people just show up during an event that is really focused on the industry alone, and not, I mean, we're talking about hands in the air worshiping Jesus.
Oh, and like goosebumps,
yeah. It's exciting. It's not anything we did. We did not build it. It is God's plan, God's direction, and calling people within the industry, and even in the Christian music world too, calling them together and getting them connected. And we just this week, as we're recording this, had our first ever Believers retreat where we got about 6 guys together. And we started praying and started saying like what the vision is and what's coming up next.
Wow.
And it's exciting.
It's super exciting.
It's really exciting because it's what I think I've been called to for sure, is connecting people within the industry, discipling them, pointing them to Jesus, and multiplying. Like let's go.
Yeah.
Let's reclaim this industry for Christ.
Yes. Now, when you met 10 years ago as 12 guys, did you see it becoming what it is today?
Absolutely not. I thought it was just an event. I didn't think it was a movement.
Okay.
I thought it was just like, oh, okay, that was really cool. Yeah, I met, Aaron Watson. He came and talked to us about his life and what's going on with him. Frank Edwards down at KROS in Corpus Christi came and shared his story. I shared my story. Let's do it again next year. Okay. And then word of mouth starts spreading. And I think at one point, every year it's featured somebody. Either Granger Smith has spoken. I would love Pastor Joby to come speak. I mean, I'm casting some visions here, Allie. So
put it out here.
let's just throw it out. Put it out in the ether.
Yeah.
Right?
I think it's so. I love when I hear about something that someone started so small. You knew God was calling you to something. You couldn't really see the future, but you just knew I got to show up today and do it. and you just have no idea what God's going to turn it into.
It's crazy.
If you just take one step in the direction, you just meet for coffee with someone, you have no idea in 10 years. And 10 years is a long time. Like this is, which I'm sure it was building across the 10 years,
Right.
but this isn't last year it was 12 guys and this year is Brandon Lake headlining and Lainey Wilson and hundreds of people.
Right.
This is 10 years of faithfully just showing up. What do you have this year for it? And believing that God's going to do what he's going to do with it. And then you're probably even more ready now to handle what it is than maybe you would have been 10 years ago.
100%, because we're different. And like I said, just doing that retreat and sitting with those group of men and where we're at 10 years later and going, all of us have really great visions, but let's make sure that we seek the Lord together.
Yeah.
And make sure that we're not just making plans. Like, let's really pray through this. And I think from this past week of being more intentional with each other and leaning in, I cannot wait to see what God does, because I'm really excited about it. So I'm so glad you asked me about it.
Yeah, oh my gosh, of course. As exciting as that is there anything lonely or isolating or hard about being a Christian in that kind of industry?
I think at first, but because I've been a part of Believers for so long, I was just in Nashville and one of the guys that I work with was like, "Oh, here comes Lou. Nobody cuss around Lou." And I'm like, "Oh yeah,
you're that guy now."
Yeah, I'm like, "Oh, now I'm that guy."
Is that kind of hard to believe?
It's shocking. It really is. Oh, wait a minute. I'm the guy you're not cussing around? Because I was not that guy several years ago.
Okay,
you know what I mean? I was not that guy at all.
Wow, yeah.
It's good, because if somebody does have something or a problem or something they want to discuss with me, I have an opportunity to hear people's heart more than when I used to. So is it hard? No, it's just called to do it, you know? Yeah, I'm just called to do it.
Yeah.
So it's like...
Yeah. I mean, I think it's kind of goes back to trusting that God is going to give you what you need in what season and leaning into that. And as the bigger project or ministry that he lays on your shoulders, the more you're built for it. Like the broader your shoulders get to carry what it is that God has asked you to do. And that's kind of what you radiate. Like it sounds like you just every day are like, okay, yes, Lord, like this is what I'm going to do. Let's go. And you want to bring this person here and do this? Okay, like I'm here for it, and I'm going to do what I can to be as faithful to that calling as possible. Now, going back in your story a little bit, did you ever fall into the slippery slope of like the rock and roll lifestyle?
Oh, 100%. Going back to when my dad said, "Hey, you're the man of the house. You got to take care of your brother." I took that very seriously until my brother turned 18. And then I felt it's my turn to live any way I want to. You're like, "Hey, look, I've been great. I've been taking care of my brother. You're an adult now. Now I get to have this delayed childhood," which ended up being more of a, Pastor Joby talks about, being a kid and you're a man. I had the delayed guy phase. That latent 1974 latchkey kid that grew up in that era. Yeah. It's like, and that was just so bad. Like, I wish I could go back in time and just go like, bro,
get it together.
Get it together with yourself. I think for me, I was really, God had his hand on me for sure. For 100% for sure. But I remember living in downtown Nashville across from the Country Music Hall of Fame in a high rise, driving a brand new Mustang, all the money in the world. I felt at the time, no wife, no kids. I could do what I want to do. And I was so miserable on my knees because I was not happy. I say it all the time, is Nashville's full of like the most miserable millionaires you'll ever be around. These people are making millions of dollars and they're just not happy. And I remember reaching out to a dear friend of mine, his name Greg Sachs. He was working with Toby Keith at the time. And I just said, "I'm miserable. bud? And he goes, man, you got to get back with the Lord. Like it took him like, and I remember a week later, I got to the condo and there was just old school King James Bible just sitting there. And I mean, I felt this conviction of like, where are you, dude? What are you, dude? What kind of man do you want to be?
Wow.
You know, like this delayed guy phase, you got to get out of it because this is ridiculous. You need to take responsibility of who you are and the people that are around you. It's game. Literally, it was like game over. You either, you need to make a decision. And I was so blessed that God had his hand around me and Greg Sachs was there for me.
And good people in your life. Like that is a key part of that story is having someone who isn't afraid to tell you, like, you got to get back with the Lord.
Like, bro.
Yeah.
Like it is time.
Yeah. I mean, job wise, you are sacrificing a lot by not living in Nashville and choosing to live in Jacksonville. But do you see it that way? Given the trade-off of family, church?
That's such a great question. And I struggled with it for a while.
Okay.
It's like lust of the flesh, lust of the eyes, pride of life. That pride of life, oof.
Yeah.
That was because I work really hard and very passionate about what I'm passionate about, right? And I felt like, well, what about me? How come I can't get that next promotion? And how come you can't do that if you don't live there. You right? And you're just like, you want to, at that time I left downtown Nashville and I moved to Middleburg and everybody's like, what happened to you? What?
Seriously?
You're in Middleburg? And
that's called falling in love.
Yes, that's exactly what happened.
The things that you will do.
What happened to Lou Ramirez? I'm talking about myself in the third person.
Middle of nowhere, Florida.
What? So yeah, I did. There was several years where I struggled with like what that looked like for me. But me and my wife just felt called to what 1122 is doing in Jacksonville, and it was absolutely the right decision. But yeah, I would be lying if I told you I didn't struggle with it and had to pray through it and was like, really had to be like, okay, Lou, is it about you? Once again, like the industry that teaches you it's all about you. And it's like, I think Joby says this, I was like, he's for you, but it's not about you. Right. And I had to really work through that.
Yeah. How do you combat this lie? I mean, it's so prevalent, not only in the music industry, but everywhere all the time. We are fed the lie that it is about us, what we want, where we want to go, do what feels right to you, do what feels good to you. So how do we, as people, as Jesus followers, combat that lie?
Yeah, that's a great question. You want to pray through it with me?
Yeah, we're still trying to do it.
I'd love to hear your thoughts too, because let's be clear, I don't have all the answers. I still work through it a lot.
Which I think is good in a sense of, I think that's part of it. I think part of it is we may never solve it here on this side of heaven.
Yeah.
And acknowledging that it exists helps us to then fight it even more. Yeah.
I need the gospel preached to me every day.
Yeah.
And you talked about there's people within the industry that are Christian, but they have the Jesus jersey. There's not a relationship there. I feel like it is so important that we are reaching out to Christians like me and reminding them of who they are through Christ. Right. And yeah, I work through it. I struggle with it. I pray through it. And you may be right. We might never figure it all out, but why? I mean,
yeah. And I think it's kind of like, it's adjacent to humility. I remember hearing, I think it was a podcast, and it was Jackie Hill Perry talking about humility. And she said, part of being humble is praying when you know you're not being humble and saying, God, I know I'm not being humble right now. Please help me to be humble. And she was saying, even if you don't feel humble, the fact that you're praying, asking God to change that is evidence that you are humble.
Yeah.
And that was really helpful for me, because it's like sometimes with humility or with making it about me, and I need to make it about, one, the Lord, two, other people, I can pray about it and I'm like, be selfless, be selfless, be selfless. You know, like you're kind of like telling it to yourself. But that is part of the struggle. Like that is part of it is, and that is the fight, is to try and say true things and ask God to change your heart and hope that your mind and your heart can catch up with the words that you're saying.
And it may be something that you deal with too, because you have a podcast. I mean, the Women's Encounter, which by the way, you were awesome.
Thank you.
That
Lou.
was incredible.
Thank you.
That was
fun.
really awesome.
It was really fun.
But that's probably things you navigate through too, because you're kind of like this face of this side of what's.
Well, and I like what you said. Like the reason it's hard for you to talk about yourself is over the years you have recognized that is a slippery slope.
Slippery for me.
And so putting in that boundary for yourself, I think is. It's just, it's so wise. I remember Pastor Joby telling us that when he would go to like a conference or a pastor's dinner, and there were a bunch of the who's who of pastors, he would always, if they were going to dinner, he would always go to the bathroom so that when he came out of the bathroom, he was the last one to sit down and he didn't have to choose his seat, because he just knew himself that he would choose a seat next to, he would analyze, you know, where's the best seat to take. And he recognized that. So then he just took that fully out of the equation, went to the bathroom so that he always had, like, God picked his seat for him, basically.
So great.
And then it always worked out for him. And so I always think about that because, you know, I was brought up I came from like the corporate world when I first was out of college. And I just kind of always grew up learning about business, and everything is, what can you get out of other people, really? And so it's who can you meet and who can you network with? And every meal is an opportunity and every meeting is not. And so I had to do a lot of unlearning when I came into ministry, that it doesn't matter where my seat is at the table.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what I think about me and where I'm trying to go. A lot of unlearning about that thing. It's not about me. And there's so much freedom when you actually walk that path.
Right.
The fact that I can walk into a room now and not think about who I'm talking to, where I'm sitting, is so freeing. So freeing.
Right.
And so it sounds like you've experienced a similar thing in that of just understanding the boundaries you need to put in place to protect yourself in a wise way from falling into the pitfalls of the world.
Right. 100%. That's why, you know, when you asked me to do this, I was like,
no, but then your wife made you say yes.
Then Stephanie said, you have to do it. And I said, okay, yes, okay. I'll do it.
And the goal with something like this is, of course, we're talking about all the interesting things that you've done. But the heart of it is, if people can hear and see how you've lived out your calling that God's given you, then they might be inspired to do the same in their life. And then it's worth it talking about yourself in that regard.
Okay.
Because they're going to see themselves, and then maybe they're going to change the world because they had the encouragement or the inspiration from you of like, okay, well, you went out to the country music industry, this big booming, and you could have easily just slid under the radar, done church in Jacksonville and done Nashville in Nashville. But you chose to not do that narrative, and that matters, and people need to hear about it. And so I'm glad you came on here and talked about yourself.
Awesome.
Okay, in closing, I want you to tell us what's like the craziest story that's ever happened with an artist.
Oh my gosh.
Are there a lot?
Yes. Craziest story that's ever happened with an artist. Oh, you're going to have to give me a second here, because there's...
It doesn't even have to be with an artist, but just like, what's something just like a wild story that's happened in your time with Warner?
I don't even know if I could mention artist names.
You probably can't mention artist names.
Yeah, that would be...
We want you to keep your job after this interview.
Yes. What had happened was, back in the day, I was navigating... Oh, gosh. I don't know. I've lost artists several times. They've gone missing for a couple of days. Yeah, on tour.
For a couple of days, you said?
Yeah, like like,
and you have to like go find them.
I've misplaced an artist.
Oh my gosh!
I can't say who.
Of course, no,
right?
of course.
But like, you wake up and you just go, so and so is not in their room. Where is so and so? When's the last time you saw so and so? Uh-oh.
And you have to find them.
Yeah. Yeah, there was a movie, Pure Country with George Strait, and
okay.
there's this section where he actually goes away and gets a haircut and gets lost for a couple days, and I'm like, I'm living Pure Country right now.
You're like,
I've
this
lost.
is the movie.
You can't put
and
out.
Where were they?
You can't put out an Amber Alert for an artist.
Sure.
Please look for a cowboy hat and.
And where were they?
Just shacked up in a hotel room somewhere.
Okay, great.
Yep. Like, you have to, hello, hey, we have some shows that we've got to go do.
Oh my gosh, that's so funny.
That's wild.
That is wild. Well, Lou, thank you so much for coming on and sharing all of the exciting things that you're doing. And I'm just so excited to see what God does with believers. And I hope we have you back on the podcast in a couple of years and you're telling us how believers is thousands of people across the whole country.
We have a book. There's a show.
Who knows?
We have a TV series.
Literally.
Right.
It's incredible. And I can't wait. I can't wait to see what God does with it. And I'm so inspired by just the way you approach the thing that God's called you to do as not just a job, but really a mission field. And I think it matters a lot. So thanks.
Well, I got to tell you how great, and thank you for what you do at the church. I mean, you are really fantastic at what you do and how you navigate these podcasts and do all these great things. And you're just such a blessing to our church and our family. And I know you work really closely with my wife, and I love you. I love you like a sister, and I just appreciate you and your husband, what you guys do with this.
Well, thanks. Okay, well, we'll see you soon back on Neighbors soon.
Let's go.
Thanks for listening. We'd love for you to join us in The Neighborhood, our Patreon community. It's a space for the good, the hard, and the hilarious. A place where real life happens. It's $5 a month or any additional amount you choose. You'll get a podcast episode once a week from Caitlin and I, plus additional videos, early access to events and merch, and more fun things we'll do along the way. So come join us by going to patreon.com/neighborspodcast and sign up. We'll see you in the neighborhood. And if you enjoy Neighbors, we'd love for you to leave us a 5-star review anywhere you listen to the podcast, or subscribe and give this video a thumbs up on YouTube. Sharing is the best way to help our conversations make it into more corners of life. To grab your favorite Neighbors merch or resources, you can head to our website, theneighborspodcast.com. Neighbors is produced by Logger Creative, audio by Taylor Minning, and music by Austin and Lindsay Adamak. See you next time.
Brighter days, new mercies every morning. You never shy away.